here's something I'd like to try and understand, and I'm not suggesting I'm going to understand this, and I'm not suggesting that you are going to be able to explain this to me, Dane. Maybe speaking with a rabbi tomorrow, if that does come off, I can learn some more. It seems to me, and anyone in the chat, and there are people already correcting me, can correct me if this is wrong from their perception, but it feels to me, maybe it's because I ingest a whole bunch of American media. Maybe that's the difference, is that anti-Semitism is the mortal sin. More so than racism, more so than sexism, more so than any other discrimination, that anti-Semitism is up the top as being the worst of the worst. First of all, I'd be interested to know from either of you guys, is that perception just me, or do you feel that as well? And secondly, if it is, I wonder why. And let me be very clear. I'm not saying if it is, it shouldn't be. I'm saying if it is, why? Like, let me just preface it by saying, if Kanye had pulled his phone out and gone, look at all these Catholics running the media, I'm going to call it the purple media, or look at all these people of Asian ancestry running the media. It doesn't feel like it would have the same than all the Jews. So it feels different, and I'm wondering why.
Look, I don't think it's. I mean, I don't think it's like the top of the worst. I don't think. I mean, I would never describe any form of racism like that. I think that bigotry is bigotry, really, and none stand again on top of another. But I think I know where you're coming from. The sense you've got, to me, it's the oldest.
Right.
That's so it's almost like it's prehistoric. This stuff is ancient stuff. I mean, this stuff goes back 2,000 years, at least. I mean, I've got my own theories on it, but they're only going to be theories, and some people share the theories that I have, but I think when you look at Christianity, for instance, Christians, Muslims, don't be offended. This is just me talking. But, Christianity had its own sort of form of utopianism to share with the world, right?
Yeah.
And the Jews said, no, thank you. And they sort of needed us to make it legitimate. I mean, there is that sense that without the Jews being on board and actually buying into this Jewish Messiah, you know what I mean? They're sort of on shaky ground, even to this day. I mean, I think there is a vulnerability in Christianity in a self-consciousness because of that, because they know that we rejected that Messiah. We rejected that utopianism. But a very similar thing.
I wonder if you're also saying, on some level, especially when you look at like the worst of the worst, like the white supremacist KKK, that kind of stuff, who then claim to be Christians, it's you killed our boy. There's that element as well, which is not only did the Jews reject this message, then they actually killed the person who was bringing it as well. Could that be a part of the underlying 2,000 years of why that feels that way?
Well, that's right. There could have been this amazing golden time. There could have been this amazing reign on earth, and you can think of it. You can think of it as quite metaphorically as well, what that reign on earth would have meant. But, utopia was so close and you rejected it for us,
Right.
And Islam is a very similar story. It's like, Muhammad, where he was preaching originally, they were around, Saudi in the desert and that, they were all Jewish cities back then, really. I mean, those whole, once the Jews had come out of the Levant and everything, they settled around a lot of those areas. And again, it was like, look, I've got a super religion to offer you. It's going to incorporate your religion. It's going to have elements of Christianity, and I'm here to wrap it in a bow. And again, we said, no, thank you. And then when you look at communism, it's a Jewish plot, to undermine capitalism. And capitalism is a Jewish plot to undermine socialism. So it's like we're there to make sure utopia never happens. The world would be fantastic if it wasn't for you meddling Jews. It really is that.
I agree. I agree with all of that, Dane. I think the interesting thing in contemporary society, and by contemporary I really mean the last 70 odd years, is the fact that all of that history, the thing that makes anti-Semitism to me such a strong emotive, again, I'm not going to try and rank people's isms at any point, but the thing is that the Holocaust happened. And it is such a clear and obvious sign of where the end point for these hatreds can be. And it's interesting, like you brought up Nick Fuentes. It's fascinating to me that the reason he's such an offensive person to many people is the fact that he's a Nazi takes him to one level. The fact that he's a Holocaust denier is like the next step. That's like the ultimate step for white supremacy.
He mocks it. He mocks the whole
exactly. Yeah, but that's the thing
like
is
David
that,
Irving, who's trying to make a case and having a veneer of sort of academia or something. He's openly mocking.
But I think that's the thing is that it is so clear to the vast majority of people that happened, and it happened because of anti-Semitism. So there is a real endpoint. It's one of the reasons I would argue that racism, it's this ridiculous kind of ranking system that we have of people's xenophobias or hatreds. Racism is climbing up the more people learn about the history. But for the last 70 years, a lot of the history has not been as widely known. Whereas the 1940s, the Holocaust, people know about it. It's in popular culture. And now you can argue it's because a lot of those movies are made by people of Jewish descent. But it's impossible to ignore. It's impossible to brush it off as something that happened. Even though it was 70 years ago, it still feels very, very contemporary. And so I think, going back to your question, Pat, I think that's why it's still, particularly in American society, particularly in the US, where Jewish culture is everywhere. It's so ingrained. It is, I mean, there is, conspiracy theories aside, the evidence of Jewish involvement in the media, the film, the music industries is so huge. I mean, some of the absolute pioneers in these businesses have been Jewish. So to try and justify that in the face of what happened 70 odd years ago is seen as so out there, that it's such a clear hatred. There just is that for most people, there is no moral justification for it. You can't try and justify away those events that happened.
Let me just jump in for a sec, because I'm the one learning here, right? This is my question. Because like I was thinking about examples today, and possibly people will criticize me for saying this. It's not racist to say there are a lot of Asian accountants. It's not racist to say there are a lot of African American basketball players, but to say there are a lot of Jews running the media seems to be so. And not racist, but anti-Semitic. And what I actually heard from you, Dane, let me repeat this back to you how I heard it, and tell me if I've sort of got something here. Not like, yay, I'm right, but as in I've learned something. It's not that the Jews get blamed for, whatever, Jesus dying or the global financial crisis, is that there's always a reason to blame the Jews for everything. Like, no matter what goes wrong in someone's life or in society, someone will always blame the Jews. Whereas someone's not always going to blame the Catholics or blame the Cambodians but there's always a link somewhere by some group holding the Jews responsible for that. And because it's always their quote unquote fault, that's perhaps one of the reasons that some people see it as more prevalent, more heightened, whatever the correct word is. Is there anything about what I've just said that resonates back from what you've been saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything I was talking about leads us to the point of, therefore, we should never let them get into any position of power. I think that's why it's an issue when Jews are in power. I mean, there might be a lot of Asian accountants, and people might say that, and it might not be taken as racist, but no one is saying, and we don't want Asian accountants.
Gotcha. Yeah.
They're not saying it because we can't trust them, so we should get them out of there. What we know from history is that these people should not have power.
Yeah,
like that's what the subtext to it all is. It's like the idea of a Jew being in power is the issue. Like Jews should be, controlled. They should be in a ghetto, locked up at night. You know what I mean? So they don't get out, like we were in Europe right way back. Put a lock on the gate at the end of the night. That's all good. That's what I think it is. It's like, it's not, I've identified all these Jews are in power, and I don't think they should be in power. I think
Yeah,
that's what it's really.
And there's also an equal and opposite as well, because like this is, I'm my tongue is in my cheek here, but not only do people not say there's so many Asian accountants, we don't want there to be. Often, I mean, I've heard maybe tongue in cheek, but you know, there's always some truth in jest. People saying, you know, if you want a good accountant, you should get an Asian accountant. Like it's actually something that people say this is a good thing. It's not even that they say there shouldn't be. They say this is good because there is a predisposed. This community is predisposed to be very good in this skill set. So that's a great thing. So it's actually literally the opposite of saying, you know, the Jews shouldn't have things. It's saying this other people group should be in this area.
At a certain level. I mean, obviously, in my business, the idea of if you want a good joke writer, find yourself a funny Jew. Absolutely. That's what you want.
I heard John Stewart say the other night, I think he was on Colbert, he said something about if you've really got a problem with a Jew, that's fine. Just find someone else to go write all your Broadway shows. Yeah. So that was his sideways joke.
Well, this has been. There was a rabbi who I follow online, an American guy, and he made a good point. He said, "Look, if we do control the entertainment industry, we got nothing to apologize for. You know, we've brought joy and laughter and everything into people's lives for 100 years now through Hollywood. So many people have been made superstars. So many fantastic films and creations have been put out there. It's like
just in case it wasn't clear, that's exactly the point I was trying to make earlier. Absolutely, I mean, I think saying there's a lot of Jews in the media is just a fact, and I was going to say thank God for it, but you know, irony. I'm going to leave religion out of it.
Well, you know, look, there's a lot of black people who box in the States, and there's a lot of Polynesian rugby league and rugby players, and great.
People have skill sets.
Yeah,
people can be predisposed for skill sets, and apparently show tunes is one of those predispositions for the Jewish community.
Well, you won't get
Dane, Dane, it's been great to have you here tonight. I really appreciate it. And if no one else got anything out of it, I'm learning, and that's always a good thing.
Well, can I leave you with this? It's a conspiracy theory.
Okay.
That's where it's a little different from other forms of racism too. And even, you know, some of the Nazis now, when they talk about Muslims, they have a conspiratorial edge to them because, and how do they justify that? Oh, well, the Jews are bringing the Muslims over.
They still find a way to slide that in there. Like I said, it's always your fault. It's always the Jewish people's fault. Hey, Dane, thanks for joining us tonight, mate. That's been amazing.
Worries.